next speaker is Ophelia Yeung. She's an economist with more than 20 years' experience leading research and consulting assignments around the world. She's the co-director of the Center for Science, Technology, and Economic Development at the world-renowned SRI International. Prior to joining SRI, she worked for American Express, Asian Development Bank, Merrill Lynch Capital Markets. Ophelia specializes in competitiveness and innovation strategies for regions and industries, which makes her perfect for this research that she's been spending about a year in the making that we're going to get to unveil now. But what I think is even more interesting is not only the research, but she also helps key stakeholders develop action agendas around the findings that she has. And she told me over the break that she also worked on the last study that was done for wellness, spa and wellness to get the size of that industry. So she's been working with this industry now for 5 years. So Ophelia, we're hanging on the edge of our seats to hear what you have to say.
So I was just talking to David McColgan down there, and then we decided that, well, we figured there were the nerd sessions here, standing between you and lunch, and so I'm going to keep to my 20 minutes. This morning, we heard some very inspiring presentations on how wellness tourism is positioned in really at the intersection of some global megatrends. And I know their numbers are different. It depends on how we measure it. But globally, tourism is estimated to be over $3 trillion industry. And global wellness, with lots and lots of different segments, is estimated by SRI to be almost $2 trillion industry worldwide. So just how big is the global wellness tourism, which is the convergence of these two industries? And this is the question that we sought out to answer with our research. So having been an economic analyst for more than 20 years, I have learned that you cannot measure something without first defining what it is. So we had to go back to the beginning to have a little discussion of defining what is wellness and who is a wellness traveler. The best way to look at wellness is to look at it along a continuum of health, which in one end we have poor health, and on the other hand, it's on your optimal state of well-being. There are two paradigms that deal with health. So on the reactive side, we have the medical paradigm, which is basically treating people who are already ill, and is led by doctors, clinicians. Interaction between patients and doctors are episodic, and it's an involuntary kind of a contact between providers and the patient. On the other side is a wellness paradigm, which we see as a proactive approach led by an individual who incorporates certain types of values into their daily lives and proactively undertake activities that bring them closer and closer to their optimal state of well-being. Converting wellness into talking about wellness traveler, we created this diagram. I don't expect you to be able to read all the words, and I don't have a name for it, but maybe I'll just call it the wellness tourism wheel here. Basically, we want to be able to link what a wellness traveler seek, what they do, and then what are the places they visit that create economic activity. So at the core are these multi-dimensional values related to wellness that goes from physical, mental, spiritual, all the way to social and environmental. And driven by these values, travelers who hold these values are interested in a lot of activities when they travel, from spa and beauty, mind, body, spiritual, personal growth, maybe even outdoor eco-adventure, fitness, healthy eating. And so on the outer ring, you can't see the words. Basically, these are the businesses and the places where these activities take place. And this is how we see who are the main players in the global wellness tourism economy. So we define here wellness tourism as travel associated with the pursuit of maintaining or enhancing one's personal well-being. To travel for the idea of wellness is not new. We know since the ancient times, people have traveled to the Dead Sea for its therapeutic muds and for purification rituals. Romans, Japanese have traveled to the baths and springs for thousands of years, again, for relaxation, rejuvenation, and for community. So even now, a lot of us think of travel as an opportunity to rejuvenate, relax, and experience new places and culture. And yet, travel is often unwell for us. We know flying on the airplane, traffic causes its own stress. Very often it disrupts our eating, exercise routine, disrupts our sleep. We may not be eating the healthiest food. Sometimes we drink too much and we stay out in the sun too long. So a lot of us after a trip, even whether it's business trip or a vacation, we come back and we often say, oh, now I need another vacation. So here we define wellness travel, two kinds of wellness travelers. The first kind are the travelers whose sole motivation for the trip is wellness. And this is the kind that come to most people's minds, especially people in the spa industry, people who go to Chivasom, people who go to Nanda in the Himalayas, to Canyon Ranch. We think of them, oh, okay, they go there. That's their destination. That's the reason they take the trip. It is also important to include whom we call the second kind, whom we call the secondary purpose wellness traveler. These are the people who are traveling not maybe for the purpose of wellness, and yet they have wellness on their minds. And so during the travel, they try to incorporate some of these activities. So some examples are those of you who went to yoga with me at 6:30 this morning. Well, you're a wellness traveler, secondary purpose, even though you're here for business. A person who's taking a ski trip, who decide to take a spa afternoon, that's a wellness traveler too. Recently, a few weeks ago, I was in Saudi Arabia for a week, and I could not go to the gym, and it was a very busy schedule. So on my way back, I had a stopover in Dubai airport, and I took advantage of the Emirates Lounge, the spa there, and I spent a couple hours there. I was a secondary wellness traveler because those values are in my mind when I travel. So even though that wasn't the intention of my trip, there are a lot of services that I would like to avail myself of when I travel. So a few words on what wellness tourism is not. So Susie mentioned this morning, people often lump medical tourism, medical travel with wellness travel. And in our minds, they could not be more different. So returning to this continuum of health, where on one side you have the medical paradigm, and on the other side you have the wellness paradigm, medical tourism is primarily undertaken by people who are seeking treatment. Most of them, not all, most of them are ill, and they are choosing the destinations because they're seeking medical care that is not available at home, maybe more available than what they have at home, or it is more affordable. So this is the kind of travel where I would consider involuntary in a sense. Whereas on the other hand, a wellness traveler, it's a voluntary activity, and it's a person who is traveling to either as primary purpose or secondary purpose to pursue wellness. So how do we measure this global wellness tourism economy? First, I mentioned we're going to include both the primary purpose and the secondary purpose wellness traveler. And second, as Jean-Claude pointed out, we include not only domestic inbound tourists, we include the often forgotten domestic tourists, which is a very large segment. Then we estimate how many wellness trips are taken by these people in each country, and we estimate the expenditures they spend on each trip. And these expenditures would include food, lodging, activities, excursions, even shopping. We don't include international transportation. We can discuss that, but it is a convention in measuring tourism that we exclude that because it makes it complicated. And finally, measuring tourism is done at the country of destination. I know sometimes you think of markets, the Chinese market, the Japanese market, you're thinking of the outbound market. But when a country or a region measure tourism activities, you have to measure it at the destination where it takes place. So this is just some definition on measurement. And now here comes the answer after about 9 months of research. As you see, the wellness tourism economy, there are huge dollars spent on transportation, in-country transportation, not international, and lodging, more than $90 billion. Food and beverage, activities, excursion, and shopping, they also account for a significant chunk. It is important to recognize that in all of these categories, some of them are wellness specific, from lodging, food and beverage, to activities and excursion. Some of these are generic in the sense that if someone could be just staying in a regular hotel, motel, or going shopping, going to museums. They don't have to be a spa restaurant. But the wellness traveler, when they spend money, all of this is included in how we look at how big that market is. So this is the big number. Globally, we estimate the wellness tourism economy to be $439 billion. And it accounts for 12 million jobs directly. And when you look at all sort of getting to a nerdy sphere, the multiplying economic impacts, induced, indirect, it accounts for more than $1 trillion of economic impact. And that actually represents 14% of global tourism spending. So how does wellness travel compare to some other travel niches? So these are some of the sort of major travel niches that most people are familiar with. Not surprisingly, wellness travel is very big. It is similar in size to culinary tourism and ecotourism, sustainable tourism. And it is bigger than sports tourism and a whole lot bigger than medical tourism. One thing I want to note is that when you look at these different niche markets, they should not be thought of as being exclusionary of each other. A traveler could have multiple motivations and intentions. So a traveler could be a wellness traveler, but at the same time, an ecotourism tourist or a sports tourist as well. There are a couple of key observations I want to make. One is that the domestic wellness tourism market is very big. It's much bigger than the international wellness tourism market. Globally, you can look at number of trips or the expenditure, but when you look at expenditure, more than 2/3 of the expenditure is accounted for by domestic tourism. And when you look at the activities in terms of trips, the numbers are even bigger. The second observation is that the secondary purpose wellness travelers is a much larger market, and they account for 80% of both the trips and expenditures. You have to remember that that same person could be both a primary purpose and a secondary purpose traveler. It could be the same person. It just depends on the intention of the trip. So wellness tourism accounts for 6% of the global trips. We estimate it to be about 524 million trips a year in wellness tourism. That's 6% of all global tourism trips, but it accounts for 14% of the expenditure. which makes wellness tourism a high value, a high yield tourism sector. When you look at the international tourism, the average tourist, this is a global average, they spend $1,000, just under $1,000 per trip. Primary and the primary and secondary international wellness tourists spend on average 65% more. And when you look at the primary wellness tourists, international tourists, they spend at least double what a typical international tourist would spend. On the domestic side, an average trip expenditure is $250. You have to remember some of these are in countries that are, may not have very high income level, and it could also be weekend trips, excursions. So this number may look small, but this is a global average. And here, the differential between the wellness tourism expenditure and the average tourism expenditure is even more. It's about 150%. So how are these activities distributed around the world? This is a map we try to cram a lot of data in, where these 525 million trips are distributed. So the majority of them are in North America and Europe. And in fact, the top 5 countries, United States, Germany, Austria, France, and Japan, account for more than 60% of all wellness tourism expenditure. Now again, don't forget, in these markets, there are a lot of travelers in these big countries traveling domestically. And within Europe, there are a lot of intra-European travelers. So these countries together, they account for more than half of the market. Because of their well-developed wellness tourism infrastructure, these countries are also among the top 10 destinations for inbound international wellness travelers. In addition to those countries I mentioned, the other top 10 countries, if I can remember, includes Spain, Switzerland, of course, South Korea, and Thailand. Forgot there's one of them, another one of them. And on the outbound side, where the wellness travelers come from, the top 15 countries account for more than 85% of them. And again, they mostly are from North American markets, Europe, and some of the wealthier Asian countries. So not only is wellness tourism high yield market, it is also going to be a high growth market. In fact, we estimate that the growth in the number of wellness trips will be on an average of 9% a year, which is significantly higher than the average tourism growth of 6%. And in fact, India is, we estimate to be the #1 country in terms of growth in wellness tourism trips and expenditure. So with this growth rate, we are estimating that in 5 years, wellness tourism is going to grow into a $679 billion market and will account for up to 16% of all global tourism expenditures. So we all know that spa is a very, very central part of wellness and wellness tourism. Look at the spa tourism, sorry. The spa industry, with its focus on wellness, prevention, and its hospitality culture, is very well positioned to take advantage of this trend, obviously. And we estimate that the spa tourism market is about 41% of the wellness tourism market. We estimate that there are 225 million spa trips, and it's expected its growth rate from 2007 to the last 5 years, it's 9.6%. So a couple words about the stakeholders. We know that, I mean, spa is very important part of, core part of wellness tourism, but spa is not all of it. And that's a very important message. The stakeholders include all these other players, from hospitality industry to health to government players and to other products providers. Hospitality companies in particular have been very innovative in pursuing this wellness trend. Some examples are the Westin hotel chain launching a brand that target travelers, in making them feel well in 6 dimensions. Intercontinental is getting ready to launch a lot of properties in the US as well, targeting sort of like the mid-market travelers, helping them to eat, sleep, and exercise well while they're traveling. And other different hotels like Fairmont and Clinton, they have been providing loaner bikes to guests, and still others have targeted yoga practitioners, providing free yoga mats, equipment, and even in-room on-demand videos. So there are many, many ways to take advantage of this trend and many different business models. And I know time's up, and the final word I want to say is that as an economist, wellness travel is an industry that has a lot of similarity with the movement in ecotourism and sustainable tourism. Because it is really, to be competitive in this market, you need to build a differentiated product that is tied to something authentic and unique. Because with all the demographic changes, we know the people aging and more people are traveling, and Generation X, Y cohorts, they have a different mindset, more open to new experiences, and they're more interested, they're more globally aware, environmentally conscious, and increasingly people are going to seek experiences that cannot just be replicated elsewhere. And so to develop wellness tourism that is based on your local traditions, products, and maybe your agricultural products and your healing traditions, that has the potential of helping to preserve and develop some of these local heritage, and as well as help protect the environment, and also stimulate small business growth and entrepreneurship. So this is one last plug I have as an economist about wellness tourism economy. And so a lot of you are stakeholders, and so I'm hoping that this presentation has given you some sense of size and scale and create some excitement so that you can continue to have this conversation and get some collaborations or some new strategies going. Thanks.
Wow. Is it just because I'm an economist, or was that like really exciting? That was really exciting. I promised you this was going to be great. The PowerPoint presentations will be available on the website later, and the research reports will be on the app later today. You actually have a button for research reports on your app, so you can see more of this. We're going to do some Q&A, so think of your questions. I want to ask you, what surprised you the most when you were doing this research?
I think the definition part was a major part of it, and I think like most of you, I thought of wellness traveler as the most well-heeled and a very exclusive club of people, until we started working on the definition, and I started thinking, well, most of the time I'm a wellness traveler, and how come there are not more amenities catering to people like me? Because it is really catering to people with certain mindset and certain needs. They need that, because that's part of how they live their life.
Yeah, it's our daily life. It's not,
yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Other questions? We have one here.
You have some very specific numbers in terms of the number of trips per country. How did you collect that data? I know I travel, and no one ever asked me, what's your reason for traveling? So I'm just curious as to how you calculated the trips.
Oh, this is, as an economist, you make a lot of assumptions. And so I always tell people it's as much of an art as much as science. There are a lot of global data, like from WTTC, the tourism satellite counts, and there is data available from UN WTO. There are data collected by Euromonitor, maybe on fewer countries, and we have collected our own data on the spa industry for many years. And also, we talk to a lot of people, and we also look at data on the in-country level. So so a lot of this, you're looking at, there's estimate of, well, how many, no one really asks people why they travel. Sometimes you fill out a visa form or entry but typically those immigration departments do not aggregate that information. Even in the US, I think they can only have a few categories like visiting friends and family or convention, or it's very few categories, and they're not standardized across countries. So we do the best we could, and it's good to, when you get too fine grained, it's really hard to say, is it this many number of trips? And so we don't want to get too much into ranking of countries, or my country has more than you. And when it gets way too fine grained, I can't tell you that it's so accurate. But it's, as an economist again, practitioner of a dismal science, we make the best assumptions and just go with it.
So we have another question here.
Ophelia, in the secondary category, in domestic, with those huge numbers, were they all linked to residential? Because I saw health and fitness clubs and spas. So for instance, did you take day spa with people going for half a day, or did you take hotel spa where they have external business? So did that contribute, or was it all linked to a residential stay? I mean, did that inflate the numbers?
No, in fact, we didn't go and aggregate all the spa industry expenditure, because a lot of these, so this gets into sort of the fine-grained measurement. In most industries, like you're looking at auto industry, you want to say how big it is. You actually go to the auto companies, or the companies categorized in their country as in the auto sector, and then add up their production. That's how usually, in most industry, they aggregate output, pharmaceuticals, food, they do it that way. In tourism, it's very difficult. We don't go to a spa and ask them, oh, how many percent is tourist, how many percent is domestic? Because the same with restaurants and movie theaters and museums, and some of them are tourists, some of them are domestic. So you have to come from the point of view of these people coming to your country, to your region. How much do they spend? So there are estimates that way on their spending. And then, really estimating exactly where they spend it. I mean, that's another kind of level of assumption. But we were not aggregating from how many spas or how many hotels.
Okay. We only have time for one more quick question.
Okay. I have a new research project for you after listening to you, Ophelia. I watched you carefully delineate or separate the medical travel from the wellness travel. However, I'd like to think of this as, and it's a question for you, how much does the wellness traveler slip over to the medical traveler, and how much does the medical traveler slip over to the wellness traveler? And the reason I ask that question is often when people have serious illnesses, all of a sudden they're the big wellness person, they've been saved, so to speak, they've seen the light. So I think that's a new project for you. I don't know if you want to comment on that or not, but
there's definitely, I think, like Susie said, we feel it's important to delineate and separate them, because mixing them together is really unhelpful. Developing a medical tourism industry successfully, you need certain medical standards, you need regulations, patient safeguard, or maybe certain insurance structure and a visa. It's a whole different.
We need to stop. Thanks, she's going to give her back the mic. No, we need to get on to the next one. But
Yes.
You know what? We're going to talk a lot more about medical and wellness and how they interact. We've got two great speakers coming up after lunch, so we're going to get really deep into that.
Yes.
But thank you so much, Ophelia. This was
thanks.
so exciting to me.